Tommy Chun was only 12 years old when his father's cargo ship crash-landed on Zirian Prime. The planet was supposed to be uninhabited, a dead rock floating in the outer rim of the Andromeda sector. That's what all the star charts said. That's what the Galactic Federation had told them. They were wrong. The ship, Lucky Star, had been carrying medical supplies to the human colonies on Kepler 442b when the hyperdrive failed. Emergency protocols kicked in, and the ship's computer found the nearest planet with a breathable atmosphere. Tommy's father, Captain Marcus Chun, had done his best to land safely, but the ship's hull cracked open like an egg when they hit the crystalline surface of Zirian Prime. Captain Chun died on impact. Tommy survived because he had been strapped into the emergency pod his father had shoved him into during the final moments before crash. When the boy crawled out of the wreckage 3 hours later, he was alone on an alien world with no way to call for help. The planet was beautiful in a terrifying way. Purple crystals jutted out from the ground like frozen lightning. The sky was orange, and 2 silver moons hung overhead even during what passed for daytime. Strange plants with metallic leaves swayed in the wind, making music like wind chimes. The air smelled like cinnamon and electricity. Tommy was scared, hungry, and crying when he heard the roar. It started as a low rumble that made the crystal formations vibrate. Then it grew louder, deeper, until it felt like the planet itself was screaming. The boy looked up and saw something that made his blood freeze. Flying toward him was a creature the size of a school bus. Its body was covered in scales that shifted colors like oil on water. 6 massive wings kept it airborne, each wing tipped with claws that could slice through steel. Its head was long and serpentine, filled with teeth the size of sword blades. 3 eyes, each one glowing like a star, focused on the small human boy standing next to the smoking wreckage. This was a void dragon, though Tommy didn't know that name yet. In the Galactic Federation, they were legend. Stories told in hushed whispers spoke of these creatures that could tear apart entire space fleets. They were said to be older than civilization itself, beings of pure destruction and rage. The Federation had fought a war against them 200 years ago and barely won by destroying their homeworlds. But here was one very much alive and very angry. The dragon landed 50 meters away from Tommy, its claws digging deep gouges in the crystal ground. When it opened its mouth, Tommy could see fire building in its throat. The heat hit him like a wall, even from that distance. He should have run. Every instinct told him to run. Instead, Tommy did something that would change the galaxy forever. He walked toward the dragon. "Please," the boy said in a small voice, tears still on his cheeks. "I don't want to hurt you. I just want to go home." The dragon paused. In all its long life, no creature had ever walked toward it without weapons or armor. Certainly no creature as small and fragile as this young human. The dragon's 3 eyes studied the boy more carefully. Tommy was thin, with black hair and brown eyes that held more sadness than any child should carry. His clothes were torn from the crash, and there was a cut on his forehead that had dried to a brown line. He was shaking, but not from fear. He was shaking from grief. "My daddy's dead," Tommy whispered, now only 20 meters from the dragon's massive head. "The ship crashed, and he's dead, and I don't know what to do." The dragon had seen death before. It had caused death before, but it had never seen grief like this, so pure and innocent. Something stirred in the ancient creature's chest, something it hadn't felt in centuries. Tommy stopped walking when he was close enough to touch the dragon's snout. The creature's breath was hot against his face, smelling of stars and deep space. One wrong move, one twitch of annoyance, and the boy would be nothing but ash. "You're beautiful," Tommy said softly. "Are you lonely too?" The dragon's eyes widened. Beautiful? No one had ever called it beautiful. Terrifying? Yes. Monstrous? Certainly. But beautiful? Tommy reached out with one small hand and placed it against the dragon's nose. The scales were warm and smooth like polished stone. The dragon could have killed him with a thought, could have burned him to nothing with a small puff of breath. Instead, The dragon lowered its great head and allowed the touch. "What's your name?" Tommy asked. "Do you have a name?" The dragon hadn't been called by name in so long. It had almost forgotten. In the old tongue of its people, before the war, before the death of its kind, it had been called Astaroth, Star Singer. But it couldn't speak human words. So the dragon did something it hadn't done in 200 years. It sang. The sound that came from its throat wasn't a roar this time. It was music deep and complex like the sound of solar winds through asteroid fields. The crystal formations around them began to glow and hum in harmony. The air itself seemed to dance with color. Tommy listened with wonder, his hands still touching the dragon's nose. "That's the most beautiful sound I've ever heard," he said. "Can you understand me?" The dragon nodded slowly. "Are you the only one left? Are you all alone?" Another nod, this one sadder. Tommy's heart broke a little more. He understood loneliness. He understood being the only one left. "I'm alone too now," he said. "Maybe we could be alone together?" The dragon's great eyes blinked slowly. In that moment, something changed between them. A connection formed, invisible but strong as gravity. The boy's grief and the dragon's ancient loneliness reached out and touched each other. That's when Tommy did the impossible thing. Standing on his tiptoes, he leaned forward and placed a gentle kiss on the dragon's snout, right between its glowing eyes. "Thank you for not burning me," Tommy whispered. "I think we're going to be friends." The dragon's massive form began to tremble, not with rage or hunger, but with something else entirely. For the first time in centuries, Astaroth the Star Singer felt something other than emptiness in its ancient heart. Far above them, hidden among the planet's rings, a Federation spy probe recorded everything. The images it captured would soon reach Admiral Sarah Vex, commanding officer of the Federation's 7th Fleet. Those images would change everything the Federation thought they knew about both humans and dragons. But for now, in this moment, there was only a lonely boy and a lonely dragon, finding comfort in each other's presence on a crystal world at the edge of space. The dragon began to purr, a sound like distant thunder. Tommy smiled for the first time since the crash. Neither of them knew that this simple act of kindness would soon reshape the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Vex had seen many impossible things in her 40 years of service to the Galactic Federation. She had watched entire star systems born from cosmic dust. She had negotiated peace with silicon-based life forms that communicated through controlled nuclear fusion. She had even survived a direct assault from a void dragon during the War of Crimson Stars 2 decades ago. But nothing had prepared her for the footage from the spy probe on Zirion Prime. The bridge of the Federation dreadnought Unbreakable Will was silent as the crew watched the recording. There, on the main screen, was a human child apparently having a conversation with the most dangerous creature in known space. The dragon, which should have incinerated the boy on sight, was instead letting him touch its face. "Run it again," Admiral Vex commanded, her voice tight with disbelief. They watched a second time as 12-year-old Tommy Chun kissed the dragon's snout. Several crew members gasped when a massive creature began to purr like some enormous cat. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Commander Torres, the ship's xenobiologist, "this contradicts everything we know about void dragon behavior. They're apex predators, driven by instinct to destroy anything that moves. They don't form social bonds. They don't show affection. They certainly don't allow physical contact from prey species." "I'm aware of what they're supposed to do, Commander," Vex replied coldly. "What I want to know is why this one isn't doing it." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's chief psychologist, spoke up from her station. "Admiral, I've been studying the boy's body language and vocal patterns. He's displaying genuine grief and vulnerability. No deception, no fear responses beyond what's normal for his situation. If the dragon has any empathic abilities..." "Dragons don't have empathy," interrupted General Morrison, the Federation's military advisor. "They're killing machines, living weapons. This is probably some kind of trap or manipulation." Admiral Vex studied the footage again. The dragon's posture, the way it lowered its head, the gentle way it responded to the boy's touch. "Computer, run a full spectrum analysis of the dragon's biosignatures during the interaction. The ship's AI processed the data in seconds. Admiral, the creature's stress hormones dropped by 73% during the physical contact. Its heart rate slowed to resting levels. Brain scans show activity in regions associated with social bonding in other species. No indicators of predatory behavior or deception. Impossible, General Morrison muttered. But Admiral Vex was remembering something else. During her encounter with a void dragon all those years ago, she had been certain she was going to die. Her ship was crippled, her crew dead or dying. The dragon had her cornered in the escape pod. But instead of killing her immediately, it had paused. For just a moment, she had seen something in its eyes that looked almost like sadness. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Zirian Prime." "From who?" "The planet is supposed to be uninhabited. The signal is coming from the crash cargo ship, ma'am. It's the emergency beacon, but someone's modified it to send voice communications." Vex straightened in her chair. "Put it through." Static filled the bridge. Then a young voice crackled over the speakers. "Hello? Hello? Is anyone out there? This is Tommy Chun on Zirian Prime. My dad's ship crashed, and he's dead. I need help, please." The crew exchanged glances. The boy was alive, apparently safe enough to work on the ship's communications array. "Hello, Tommy," Admiral Vex said, activating the response channel. "This is Admiral Vex of the Federation ship Unbreakable Will. We've received your distress signal. Are you injured?" "No, ma'am. I mean, I have some cuts and stuff, but I'm okay. My friend is taking care of me." "Your friend?" There was a pause, then the boy's voice came back excited. "Oh, you're going to love him, Admiral. His name is Astaroth, and he's the most amazing creature I've ever met. He can sing, and his scales change colors, and he's been keeping me warm at night." General Morrison leaned toward the communication panel. "Son, you need to get away from that dragon immediately. It's extremely dangerous." "Dragon?" Tommy's voice sounded confused. "Oh, you mean Astaroth? He's not dangerous. Well, I guess he could be if he wanted to, but he's really gentle. He brought me fruit to eat, and he's been showing me around the planet. Did you know there are crystal caves here that sing when the wind blows through them?" Dr. Vasquez was frantically taking notes. "Admiral, this is unprecedented. The child has been with the creature for at least 18 hours, based on the time since the crash. If the dragon intended harm, it would have acted by now. Or it's playing with its food," Morrison growled. But Vex was thinking about the bio readings, about the dragon's obvious emotional response to the boy's touch. "Tommy, I need you to tell me exactly what happened when you first saw your friend." Tommy's voice became more serious. "I was really scared and sad because of Dad. Astaroth came flying over, and I thought he was going to hurt me. But then I really looked at him, and I could tell he was sad too. So I talked to him instead of running away." "And he didn't attack you?" "No, ma'am. He just listened. I think he was lonely. I think he's been lonely for a really long time." Admiral Vex felt a chill run down her spine. According to Federation intelligence, the Void Dragons had been a social species before the war. They had lived in great flights, hundreds of them together. The Federation's victory had come from destroying their breeding grounds and scattering the survivors. What if they hadn't just defeated the dragons? What if they had driven them insane with isolation? "Tommy," she said carefully, "we're going to come get you, okay? We'll be there in 6 hours." "Okay, but you have to promise not to hurt Astaroth. He's my friend." General Morrison started to object, but Vex held up a hand. "I promise we'll try to work something out, Tommy. Just stay safe until we get there." After the transmission ended, the bridge erupted in debate. Morrison wanted to blast the dragon from orbit the moment they arrived. Dr. Vasquez argued for a peaceful first contact protocol. Lieutenant Commander Torres worried about the ecological implications of a surviving void dragon. But Admiral Vex was thinking about something else entirely. If a 12-year-old human boy could form a bond with the galaxy's most feared predator, what did that say about humans? And more importantly, what did it say about the dragons? "Set course for Zirian Prime," she ordered. "Maximum speed. And prepare a xenobiology team for potential first contact." Admiral Morrison protested. Regulations clearly state that any void dragon encounters should be met with immediate force. Regulations were written based on our understanding of these creatures as mindless killers, Vex replied. That understanding may have been wrong. We're going to find out. As the unbreakable will jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Vex stared at the recorded image of Tommy Chun kissing the dragon's snout. In 40 years of military service, she had learned that sometimes the most important discoveries came from the most unexpected places. She just hoped they would arrive at Zirian Prime before the rest of the Federation fleet detected the dragon's presence. Because if they did, Tommy Chun and his impossible friend would both be dead within the hour. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the fiercest monsters were simply creatures who had forgotten how to trust. And sometimes it took the pure heart of a child to remind them. The night on Zirian Prime was unlike anything Tommy had ever experienced. The two silver moons cast everything in a pale, dreamlike glow, and the crystal formations hummed with mysterious energy. Astaroth had built a shelter for them in a cave that sparkled like the inside of a geode. Tommy sat curled against the dragon's warm side, watching the alien constellations through the cave opening. Astaroth's breathing was slow and steady, a comforting rhythm that reminded the boy he wasn't alone anymore. Do you miss them? Tommy asked quietly. Your family, I mean. The dragon's great head turned toward him, one golden eye focusing on the small human. Astaroth made a low, mournful sound that seemed to come from deep within his chest. I miss my dad too, Tommy said, his voice barely a whisper. He used to tell me stories about space, about all the amazing things out there. He said humans were special because we could make friends with anyone, even aliens. I never thought he meant dragons, though. Astaroth shifted slightly, extending one massive wing to cover Tommy like a blanket. The boy smiled and snuggled closer to the warm scales. Will you tell me about your people? I know you can't talk like me, but maybe you can show me? The dragon considered this, then began to sing. But this time the song was different. As the haunting melody filled the air, images began to appear in the crystalline walls around them. Tommy gasped in wonder as the crystals became like television screens, showing him glimpses of the past. He saw vast fleets of dragons soaring through space, their scales shimmering with starlight. He watched as they built magnificent cities on floating asteroids, structures that seemed to grow organically from cosmic debris. The dragons weren't just predators, Tommy realized. They were artists, engineers, explorers. The images showed families of dragons, adults caring for young ones with the same gentle attention Astaroth showed him. He saw dragon children playing in zero gravity, their laughter creating music that made nearby planets ring like bells. Then, the images grew darker. Ships appeared, sleek Federation vessels that Tommy recognized from history books. The war had begun over a misunderstanding, a mining dispute on a distant world. But it had escalated quickly into something terrible. Tommy watched in horror as dragon cities burned. He saw families scattered, younglings separated from their parents. The Federation's weapons were designed specifically to kill dragons, and they were brutally effective. The final image showed Astaroth himself, much younger, fleeing through space as his homeworld died behind him. He had been searching for survivors ever since, drifting from system to system for 200 years, finding nothing but empty space and bitter loneliness. When the images faded, Tommy was crying. I'm so sorry, he whispered, pressing his face against Astaroth's warm scales. I'm so sorry that happened to you. The dragon's song became softer, more comforting. Tommy felt a strange sensation in his mind, like someone very gently touching his thoughts. Suddenly, he could sense Astaroth's emotions directly: gratitude, affection, and something that felt like hope. You're not just touching my mind, are you? Tommy asked in wonder. You're sharing it. The mental connection grew stronger. Through Astaroth's memories, Tommy experienced what it was like to fly between stars, to sing with the cosmic wind, to feel the gravity of planets pulling at your wings. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever felt. In return, Tommy shared his own memories. Astaroth experienced birthday parties and Christmas mornings, the taste of chocolate ice cream, the feeling of his father's hand ruffling his hair. The dragon had never known such simple joys, such uncomplicated love. They fell asleep that way, minds linked, sharing dreams of flying together among the stars. Tommy woke to the sound of engines overhead. Astaroth was already awake, his great head raised and alert. Through their mental bond, Tommy could feel the dragon's sudden anxiety. "It's okay," Tommy said, placing a reassuring hand on Astaroth's neck. "Those are Federation ships. I called them for help. They're friends." But Astaroth's fear was growing stronger. Through the dragon's memories, Tommy saw what Federation ships meant: death, destruction, the end of everything good in the world. No, Tommy said urgently. "These are different. The war is over. They won't hurt you. I won't let them." 3 ships descended through Zirian Prime's orange sky. The largest was a massive dreadnought that made the ground shake as it landed. Smaller shuttles buzzed around it like insects, their sensors sweeping the area. Tommy and Astaroth emerged from their crystal cave to meet them. The boy walked confidently, but the dragon hung back, every instinct telling him to flee or fight. "Trust me," Tommy said through their bond. "I trust you, so you can trust me." The first person out of the main shuttle was Admiral Vex herself. She was a tall woman with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen too much war. Behind her came a team of scientists, soldiers, and diplomats, all of them staring in amazement at the sight of a human child standing next to a living void dragon. "Hello, Admiral," Tommy called out cheerfully. "I told you that you'd love him." Admiral Vex approached slowly, her hands visible and empty. She had studied every piece of dragon lore in the Federation database during the 6-hour journey to Zirian Prime. She knew that any wrong move could trigger a violent response. "Hello, Tommy," she said calmly. "Thank you for waiting for us. Is this your friend Astaroth?" "Yes, ma'am. He's a little nervous because he remembers the war. But I told him you're different." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her scanner beeping softly. "The neural link between them is incredible," she whispered to Admiral Vex. "I'm reading synchronized brainwaves. They're not just communicating, they're genuinely bonded." General Morrison remained near the shuttle, his hand resting on his sidearm. "Admiral, we need to separate the child from that thing immediately. It's clearly using some kind of psychic control." "I can hear you, you know," Tommy said, frowning at the general. "And Astaroth isn't controlling me. We're friends, real friends." To prove his point, Tommy walked over and hugged Astaroth's massive neck. The dragon lowered his head and gently nuzzled the boy's hair. Admiral Vex felt her worldview shifting. Everything the Federation thought they knew about void dragons was wrong. These weren't mindless killing machines. They were a sentient species that had been driven to near extinction by fear and misunderstanding. "Dr. Vasquez," she said quietly, "I want a full psychological evaluation of both the boy and the dragon. Commander Torres, begin a biological scan. I want to know everything about this creature's physiology and behavior. And if it attacks?" General Morrison demanded. Admiral Vex looked at Tommy, who was now sitting between Astaroth's front claws while the dragon created beautiful light patterns with his scales. "I don't think that's going to be a problem, General." But even as she spoke, Admiral Vex's risk communicator was receiving a priority transmission. The Federation Council had detected their presence on Zirian Prime. More ships were coming, ships commanded by officers who had lost friends and family to dragons during the war. Ships commanded by people who would shoot first and ask questions later. Admiral Vex had perhaps 2 hours before those ships arrived. 2 hours to prove that everything the galaxy believed about dragons was wrong. 2 hours to save both Tommy and Astaroth from becoming casualties of old hatred and new fear. The boy and the dragon had found friendship in the most unlikely circumstances. Now, it was up to Admiral Vex to make sure that friendship survived what was coming. Admiral Vex had 93 minutes before the Federation war fleet arrived at Zirian Prime. She spent the first 20 of those minutes watching Dr. Vasquez conduct the most unusual psychological evaluation in galactic history. Tommy sat cross-legged on the crystal ground, completely relaxed, while Astaroth curved his massive body protectively around the boy. The dragon's 3 eyes were fixed on the scanning equipment, but he showed no signs of aggression. Instead, he seemed curious about the strange devices the humans were using. "The neural link is extraordinary," Dr. Vasquez reported, studying her readouts. "It's not psychic control or manipulation. It's a genuine empathic bond, similar to what we see in bonded pairs of some mammalian species. Both subjects show elevated levels of oxytocin and dopamine, chemicals associated with trust and affection." Commander Torres was running biological scans on Astaroth with Tommy's help. The boy had explained to the dragon what they were trying to do, and Astaroth had actually extended his wing to allow better access to the scanning equipment. "Admiral, these readings are incredible," Torres said, excitement clear in his voice. "The dragon's brain structure is highly developed, far more complex than we realized. There are regions here that suggest advanced mathematical reasoning, artistic expression, even philosophical thinking. This creature isn't just intelligent, it's brilliant." "What about aggression indicators?" Admiral Vex asked. "That's the fascinating part. The dragon has the physical capacity for extreme violence, but the brain chemistry shows it's currently in a state of deep contentment. All stress hormones are at minimum levels. It's the neurological equivalent of a house cat purring in someone's lap." General Morrison, monitoring communications from the shuttle, looked increasingly agitated. "Admiral, I'm receiving reports from the incoming fleet. Admiral Harrison of the Vengeance is demanding an immediate status report. He lost his brother to a dragon attack during the war. He's not going to be interested in scientific observations." Admiral Vex felt time slipping away. She needed proof, something undeniable that would force the Federation to reconsider their position on dragons. "Tommy, I need to ask you a very important question. Do you think Astaroth would be willing to communicate directly with me?" Tommy looked up from where he was showing Astaroth how to play tic-tac-toe in the crystal sand. "You mean like he does with me? With your minds touching?" "Yes. If he could show other adults what he showed you, it might help them understand." Tommy turned to Astaroth and spoke softly in the boy's voice, but Admiral Vex could sense the conversation happening on a deeper level. The dragon's eyes studied her carefully. Then he made a low, musical sound. "He says he's willing to try," Tommy translated. "But he's scared. The last time he tried to communicate with adult humans, they shot at him. I promise I won't hurt him, Tommy. I need to understand what you two share." Tommy stood up and walked over to Admiral Vex. "Give me your hand," he said simply. When she complied, Tommy placed her palm against Astaroth's warm snout, then covered both their hands with his own small ones. "Astaroth, show her what you showed me. Show her who you really are." The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Admiral Vex gasped as her mind was gently touched by an intelligence vast and ancient. She experienced Astaroth's memories of soaring through nebulae, of singing with his clanmates as they built beautiful cities in space. She felt his joy at discovering new worlds, his love for his family, his deep reverence for all life. Then came the darker memories. The First Federation attack, the confusion and terror as his people tried to understand why these small beings wanted to destroy them. The heartbreak of watching younglings die, the despair of seeing centuries of art and culture reduced to floating debris. Finally, she experienced his 200 years of loneliness, drifting through empty space, searching desperately for others of his kind, and finding nothing but silence. When the connection ended, Admiral Vex was weeping openly. "My God," she whispered, "what have we done?" "Admiral," General Morrison's urgent voice cut through the moment. "Long-range sensors detect 12 Federation warships dropping out of hyperspace. Admiral Harrison is hailing us on emergency frequency." With shaking hands, Admiral Vex activated her communicator. "Admiral Harrison, this is Admiral Vex. I need you to hold position and listen to my report before taking any action." Sarah, what the hell are you doing down there? Harrison's voice was harsh with old anger. Sensors show a confirmed void dragon on the planet's surface. I'm ordering an immediate orbital bombardment. James, you need to stand down. The situation is not what it appears to be. The situation is that there's a dragon alive on that rock, and my brother's killer might finally face justice. I'm not standing down. Tommy had been listening to the conversation, his face growing pale. Through their bond, Astaroth sensed the boy's fear and began to make anxious sounds. They're going to hurt him, Tommy said, tears starting to flow. They're going to kill him, aren't they? Admiral Vex looked at the boy, then at the gentle creature who had spent the morning learning human games and sharing memories of cosmic beauty. She thought about her duty to the Federation, about the rules and regulations she had sworn to uphold. Then she thought about justice, real justice, and the difference between vengeance and understanding. Tommy, I need you to ask Astaroth to do something very brave, she said. Can he carry you into the air? High enough for the other ships to see you. He can fly to the moons if I want, Tommy said proudly. But why? Because sometimes people need to see something impossible before they can believe it's real. Within minutes, Astaroth was airborne with Tommy secured safely between his shoulder blades. The dragon's scales shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that Tommy had learned meant happiness and trust. They soared upward, past the clouds, until they were visible to every ship in the Federation fleet. Admiral Vex opened a channel to all vessels. Attention all ships, this is Admiral Vex broadcasting on priority frequency. You are observing a 12-year-old human boy flying on the back of a void dragon. The child is not a prisoner. He is not being coerced. He has formed a genuine friendship with this creature. That's impossible, came Harrison's response, but his voice was less certain now. The dragon's name is Astaroth, Vex continued. He is the sole survivor of his species, and he has spent 2 centuries alone in space. When he encountered Tommy Chun, instead of killing the boy, he chose to protect and care for him. They have formed an empathic bond that challenges everything we thought we knew about dragons. High above, Tommy and Astaroth performed a graceful aerial dance, the dragon's wings cutting through Zirian Prime's thin atmosphere, while the boy laughed with pure joy. The sight was being broadcast to every ship in the fleet, and Admiral Vex could hear the amazed voices of hundreds of crew members over the open channels. I'm transmitting all our scientific data to your ships now, Vex announced. Dr. Vasquez's psychological evaluation, Commander Torres's biological scans, and my own personal testimony after establishing neural contact with the dragon. I am also transmitting visual records of the dragon's memories, his people's culture, and the true history of our conflict with them. There was a long silence as the fleet processed this information. Then, Admiral Harrison's voice returned, quieter now, thoughtful. Sarah, are you telling me we've been wrong about them? That we committed genocide against a peaceful species? Admiral Vex watched as Tommy and Astaroth descended slowly toward the planet's surface, the boy's laughter echoing across the crystal landscape. I'm telling you, James, that sometimes our greatest enemies become our greatest teachers. And sometimes it takes a child to show us the difference between fear and understanding. The Federation fleet held position, weapons powered down, as a 12-year-old boy and his dragon friend landed safely on Zirian Prime. History was about to change, and it had started with a gentle kiss from a lonely child who chose love over fear. 6 months after the events on Zirian Prime, Tommy Chin stood before the Galactic Federation Council on the capital world of New Terra. He was still just 12 years old, but the galaxy now knew his name. Next to him, taking up most of the massive council chamber, lay Astaroth, his scales shimmering with patterns that meant calm happiness. The council chamber had been specifically modified for this historic session. The ceiling had been raised, and special atmosphere processors ensured both human and dragon could breathe comfortably. Representatives from 100 worlds watched in fascination as the boy absently scratched behind one of the dragon's massive ears. The chair recognizes Tommy, Chun of Earth, announced Chancellor Williams, a dignified woman from the Centauri colonies. Tommy stood up, suddenly, nervous despite all his preparation. Astaroth made a soft, encouraging rumble that helped calm the boy's nerves. Honored representatives, Tommy began, his voice small but clear in the vast chamber. 6 months ago, my dad died in a crash on Zirian Prime. I thought I was going to die too, alone and scared on an alien world. Instead, I met my best friend. He placed his hand on Astaroth's snout, and the dragon's eyes closed contentedly. I know a lot of you are afraid of dragons because of the war. I know they hurt people you cared about, and I'm sorry for that. But Astaroth has shown me what really happened, and I think you need to know the truth. At Tommy's request, Astaroth began to sing. The haunting melody filled the chamber, and the crystalline communication arrays built into the walls began to glow. Suddenly, every representative in the chamber was experiencing the dragon's memories firsthand. They saw the dragon homeworlds as they had been before the war, beautiful crystal cities floating in space where art and science flourished together. They watched dragon families teaching their young to sing the songs that could make asteroids ring like bells, to dance among solar winds, to find joy in the simple act of existing among the stars. Then came the mining dispute on Kepler 7, the misunderstanding that had started everything. A Federation survey team had begun extracting rare minerals from what they thought was a dead asteroid. They hadn't known it was actually a dragon nursery, a carefully cultivated garden where dragon eggs absorb cosmic radiation to develop properly. The dragons had tried to communicate, tried to explain the significance of the place. But the Federation team had seen only aggressive monsters attacking their mining operation. The first shots had been fired in fear, not malice, but the dragons couldn't understand why these small beings wanted to destroy their children. The war that followed was a tragedy of mutual incomprehension. The Federation fought what they saw as mindless predators. The dragons defended what they thought were deliberate attacks on their most sacred places. Both sides had suffered terribly, but the dragons had lost everything. When the memories ended, the council chamber was silent except for the soft sounds of weeping. Representative Kala from the Vulcan colonies was the first to speak, her voice shaken. "We thought we were defending ourselves against monsters," she said. "Instead, we destroyed an entire civilization." Admiral Harrison stood up from his position in the military section. His face was drawn with old pain and new understanding. "My brother died fighting dragons during the siege of Proxima Station. For 20 years, I've carried hatred in my heart. Now I discover that my brother died in a war that should never have happened, fighting people who were defending their children." Tommy looked around the chamber at all the adult faces, seeing confusion, guilt, and the slow dawning of hope. "Astaroth doesn't hate you," he said. "He's sad about what happened, but he doesn't want revenge. He just wants to not be alone anymore." Dr. Vasquez, now promoted to director of xenopsychology, stood to address the council. "In the past 6 months, we've learned more about dragon psychology and culture than the previous 2 centuries. They're not just intelligent, they are profoundly empathic. The aggression we saw during the war was not natural behavior. It was trauma response, the psychological breakdown of a species forced to watch their society crumble." She activated a holographic display showing brain scans. Dragons form deep emotional bonds not just with their own kind, but with any being capable of genuine empathy. Young Tommy here isn't just Astaroth's friend. In dragon terms, they have become family. Chancellor Williams leaned forward in her chair. "What are you suggesting, Dr. Vasquez?" "I'm suggesting that the Federation has an opportunity to right a historical wrong. We've recently detected 3 more dragons in distant sectors of space, all alone, all showing signs of severe psychological distress. We could establish contact protocols, offer them healing, maybe even the chance to rebuild their species." Representative Morrison from the Mars colonies stood up. "And if they refuse? If they want revenge for what we did to them?" Tommy and Astaroth shared a look, one of those moments of perfect understanding that their bond made possible. "May I show you something?" Tommy asked. At the Chancellor's nod, Tommy pressed his palms against Astaroth's head and opened his mind to the chamber. Through the communication arrays, every representative experienced what Tommy felt every day. The dragon's vast, gentle intelligence, his love of beauty and music, his deep longing for connection and understanding. But more than that, they felt Astaroth's hope. Despite everything he had lost, despite 2 centuries of loneliness, he still believed in the possibility of peace. He still wanted to trust, to love, to create something beautiful with these small beings who had once been his enemies. When a connection ended, Chancellor Williams wiped tears from her eyes. "I think," she said slowly, "that it's time for the Federation to formally apologize to the Dragon people, and to ask if they might be willing to teach us how to be better neighbors to the universe." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the Federation Council officially acknowledged committing genocide against a peaceful species. They allocated resources for dragon rehabilitation, for cultural preservation, and for the establishment of what would become known as the Empathy Protocol's new guidelines for first contact with alien species. But more than that, they gave Astaroth something he had thought was lost forever, the promise that he wouldn't be alone. 1 year later, Tommy Chun graduated from a newly established Xenoempathy Academy with the highest honors in the program's history. He was 13 now, taller, and more confident, but he still kept his hand on Astaroth's neck whenever he was nervous. Standing beside them were 3 other dragons: Kirith the Voidwalker, Celeste the Songkeeper, and young Nalith, barely more than a hatchling who had been found drifting in a cryopod near the ruins of the dragon homeworld. The dragons were no longer alone, and thanks to a human boy's gentle kiss on a crystal world, the galaxy had learned that sometimes the fiercest monsters were simply broken hearts waiting for someone brave enough to heal them. Tommy looked up at the stars through the Academy's dome and smiled. His father had been right after all. Humans really were special, not because they could conquer or destroy, but because they could choose love over fear, understanding over hatred. Somewhere in space, other species were watching humanity's interaction with the dragons. Watching and learning that these strange beings called humans possessed something rare in the universe: the ability to admit when they were wrong, and the courage to make things right. Astaroth began to purr, a sound like distant thunder that harmonized with the songs of his 3 companions. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself approved of this new beginning. And in the end, that's how the galaxy was changed, not by weapons or conquest, but by a lonely boy who chose to kiss a dragon instead of running away.